I want it to be possible for 19-year-olds to say, hey, this happened, without it ruining their career anymore. But they can't, because of the preposterous amount of power, because of, the fact that these men will then say, oh, don't work with her. And they'll be blacklisted. And we have to stop that. Because what it is, it's a massive brain drain. And there are so many women who have been abused out of the music world and who have just left the music world because it was ruined for them by this abuse. And some of those could have been, can you imagine the amount of talent that's just gone by the wayside? Half of the people that wrote to me are not in the profession anymore. Half of those don't even listen to music anymore, like any kind of music. Like the whole thing, what they loved, what they thought they were going to give their lives to, was ruined by the greed of one man.
Hi, you're listening to Conversations with Musicians with Leah Roseman, which I hope inspires you through the personal stories of a fascinating diversity of musical guests. I knew parts of this conversation would be difficult because violinist Lara St. John is a survivor of a horrible case of sexual abuse and assault at one of the most famous music schools. I've been following her story since the first article came out in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I wanted to release an episode with her close to the release of her film, Dear Lara. She'll be announcing the world premiere of this powerful documentary in early 2026, which I was able to view before this conversation that we recorded earlier this year in October. Please note that there are detailed timestamps so that you can go to specific parts of this wide-ranging interview, especially since there are mentions of both sexual assault and a suicide attempt. However, Lara is so much more than a survivor, activist, and filmmaker. She's known internationally as a phenomenal violin soloist, and her creativity, warmth, humor, and brilliance come through in this interview, during which we talked about many things. Her decision to become the first classical soloist to start her own record label, her formative year in the former U.S.S.R, advice about learning music and the violin, and a tribute to one of her main mentors, Joey Corpus. In fact, Joey's amazing story wasn't one I was familiar with, and since this conversation, I've learned more about this inspiring pedagogue. We talked about 2 of her many albums, and you'll hear a couple of clips from Shiksa and She, Her, Hers. Track names are in the timestamps, and everything is linked to Lara's website in the show notes. Lara is also known for her love of iguanas, and at the very beginning of this episode, you'll get to meet Baby Octavius. Like all my episodes, you can watch this on my YouTube channel or listen to the podcast on many podcast platforms, and I've also linked the transcript. It's a joy to bring these inspiring episodes to you every week, and I do all the many jobs of research, production, and publicity. Have a look at the show notes of this episode, where you'll find all the links.
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
Hi, Lara.
Cute. This is Baby Octavius. So he wanted to say hello.
For those people listening to the podcast, I will encourage them to check out the show notes. We'll definitely have a photo of him, and they'll see this on socials. So can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, he's actually a Caribbean iguana. So it's different from the ones you see like in Florida and stuff. He's actually critically endangered. So there's 4 breeders in the States, and we're trying to kind of bring them back. And yeah, he's almost 3 years old. He came to me at 3 weeks when he was the size of a cricket. So basically I've known him forever, since he was a tiny little baby. And as you can see, he loves cuddles and pats. And if I kiss his head, he closes his eyes. See?
He is essentially a miniature dinosaur.
He is, but he's vegan. He's only scary to like raspberries and he loves nasturtiums, for example. We just found that out. But his main thing is collard greens, dandelions, and green things.
I saw that reel you posted recently with him eating nasturtiums.
Yeah.
And then you improvised a little bit on top of that.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to get the sync right on a munching iguana, but I did my best.
Well, thanks for bringing him out.
Yeah, he's going to go back and have some sun. Yeah, he kind of lives over there in my office, and we have quite the little menagerie, actually. There's a little urban squirrel that comes by pretty much every day, and some doves and a cardinal these days. So pretty good for Manhattan, I'd say.
So Lara, among your many honors, you were appointed to the Order of Canada a few years ago, and I understand it comes with some special perks sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, this year I got invited to this kind of, I actually couldn't believe it when I saw the guest list. I was like, this can't be for real. They're just like naming people who are on the Order of Canada or something. But these folks actually are coming to Canadian Thanksgiving. And it's like Mike Myers and like Michael J. Fox and Ryan Reynolds and Vincent Garber. And it's hosted by Paul Schaefer. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Um, and a couple of other folks, and I think it's just kind of, oh well, I'll find out, and I'm sure I will selfie the hell out of myself and be like the annoying fangirl that I truly am for some of these folks. But yeah, it's kind of exciting. So I guess it was just, also Graydon Carter. When I saw that it was Graydon Carter, I realized it's probably the consul sort of saying, "All right, guys, we need to, let's band together and figure out what to do," kind of thing. Because I've known Graydon Carter's been, well, I mean, famously for decades, kind of very anti the present regime.
It's been your home for a very long time, New York.
It has, and I mean, at least once a month I'm back in Canada, like, or once every 2 months at the very least, like all the time every year, except for in COVID. But yeah.
Actually, speaking of coming back to Canada, there's quite a beautiful story recently. You brought a special violin to Toronto.
Oh, Moishe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little while ago. It was actually through the Israeli Foundation. They had me do the premiere of one of the people who won the Israeli prize. Oh gosh, I think it was back in 2018 or 2019, just before COVID. And so we did the premiere in Montreal, and then we went over to Warsaw and Prague to do the same concert there. And I wandered into this antique store with Sharon Azraeli, and we were sort of looking around. She said, "Oh, look, there's a violin," and it turned out that there was a Star of David on the back in bronze and black enamel. And I thought, wow, this is quite something. And I asked the guy, "Where's it from?" And he was super grouchy. It was just like, "You expect me to know where everything's from?" I mean, it was like a ridiculous antique store, like thousands and hundreds of thousands of stuff. And then we wandered into sort of a back place, like a sort of a back room, really, and it had like Nazi memorabilia, like the real stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was quite disturbed by that because in Germany, of course, that's completely illegal, and apparently in Poland it's not, and people can make money by selling it. And I was really disturbed by that, so I thought, well, I got to get Moishe out of there. So I bought him, and he didn't even come with a case, so I had to take him on the plane like a baby or something, until Prague. And one of the nice people in Prague offered me an old violin case, so at least I could carry him home in a case. But yeah, so he lived in New York for a while, and I thought, well, the person I live with in Toronto, when I'm there, she has a wonderful house and is so generous, and her brother-in-law has a klezmer band, and the other time I was there, they said, "Oh, we'll borrow a violin so you can play some tunes." And I thought, that's really where Moishe deserves to live, not just one of 7 or 8 violins I have here, living under a piano, occasionally playing in my klezmer band. He should be the house fiddle for the Gladstone family. So Moishe now lives in Toronto, and I think he's happy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're friends with Alicia Spiegels, right?
Oh yeah. I take lessons from her.
Okay.
I call them lessons.
Yeah.
Or I used to. I haven't for a little while, but yeah, she basically taught me, the ins and outs of klezmer playing and stuff. And you don't. I mean, unless somebody actually tells you, you don't really realize that there's actually no vibrato. It's all trills. It's all cracks. It's all this and that. And it, once you sort of figure that out, suddenly you start sounding more like the clarinets of yore and stuff like that. It's very interesting how it even more than what we do. It really is just a imitation of a voice.
Yeah. So she's one of several klezmer musicians I've had on. She was one of my early
really? Oh, cool.
Interviews, and
yeah, she's great.
Yeah. It might be interesting to talk a little bit now about your album Shiksa with Matt.
Oh, sure.
It's such a beautiful album. I've really enjoyed listening to it. could we include a clip or a track from that?
Sure.
Yeah.
We like, yeah.
One of my favorites is actually the pain will find us.
The Greek one.
Is it
Yeah,
Greek? Okay.
it is Greek. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's nice. It's sort of a Roma Greek, actually.
Mhm.
So really interesting stuff. There's a cool composer from New Zealand, actually, John Salfas. He's Greek New Zealander. I'm
Mhm.
not quite sure how to say that. New Zealand Greek, or well, anyway. Um, and I met him some time ago and asked him to set a couple of Greek tunes. So that was the one that really stood out.
Yeah, so that project's from about 10 years ago.
Yes, I would say, yeah, about 2015. My whole life, I've been really interested in stuff from. I mean, it's such a big region that I can't even sort of folk music, Roma music, Jewish music, Central European, Balkan, Greek, from the Levant, that whole big area basically, and since kind of childhood actually, and so I lived in the U.S.S.R. for a while and learned a lot more stuff at that point. Went down to Armenia and learned about Armenian tunes, and basically just been collecting them my whole life. And then I thought, well, why don't I bring some of my favorite ones to basically the concert stage, like the recital stage, which I uh, play on, and give them a new life. So I had them arranged, or I did a couple myself, and just started doing them live.
Hmm. And you're known for also your arrangements and transcriptions and improv. So did when you started to play this kind of music, did that kind of open that up for you?
Yeah, I mean, some of it, a lot of it, because I asked composers for the Shiksa album, at least.
Hmm.
I asked composers so they would, a lot of it was written out. But for example, in the Achia Zain and some of Matt's stuff,
Hmm.
there's a bunch of sort of open solos there that happened, and yeah, I mean, it's as you go further east, actually,
Hmm.
then there's sort of more room for open solos rather than further west.
Hmm.
Like, for example, you'll hear the difference in even just Serbian to Bulgarian Roma music. Like, Bulgarian has way more open solos, and Serbian tends to be verse chorus chorus. So it's interesting how it changes, even though it's the same kind of origin. It changes from space to space in that kind of relatively small area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we'll dig in a little bit more about your time in the USSR a little bit later to put it in context. So I think we need to talk about your upcoming film, Dear Lara, which you've been working on for several years.
Yeah, the impetus began, I guess, to give a little background, which I probably should. I became public in 2019. I worked on that article for about 8 months with the Philadelphia Inquirer. Became public about what happened to me when I was 14 years old at the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia. To make a very long and sad story short, under threat of expulsion, because it's a full scholarship school, for not just me but also my brother. who was there and studying with the same major teacher, Yasha Brodsky. I was abused and finally raped by this man at 14 when he was 78. So obviously that's a troublesome thing for anyone of any age. And eventually I got two friends that I was able to speak to a little bit. I didn't tell them the full story, but enough for them to be like, what? We have to get you out of that situation. And so the three of us went to the dean, and he actually just scoffed and said, what do you want me to do about it? And, my guy friend said, well, she has to change teachers, And the dean said, well, we don't do that at Curtis. That does not happen. And I was just, it was basically a big fountain. And finally, I guess they probably realized they had a bit of a problem on their hands, and the wife of the then director, Naomi Grafman, took me out for ice cream and said, oh, isn't this great? We've managed to switch your teacher. And of course, there's no need to tell anyone else about this, right? And I said, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to tell anyone else about it. I just wanted to get out of that situation. I was so glad I wasn't getting punished, actually, in one way or another, like expelled or something. I mean, it was a very hard time. But eventually I just, they never did anything to the pedophile rapist. He was allowed to just continue teaching, and he taught till he died. And I actually couldn't, it was really hard for me to just be in the same building and sometimes see him. So I graduated the minute I could and left. I had just turned 17 years old, and I left a full scholarship school where my brother also lived because of what was done to me.
And you certainly didn't feel you could have gone to the police at that point.
Well, the dean actually said at one point, who do you think the police would believe? Some kid or somebody who's been with this school for decades? And I had the feeling he was right. And they knew at that time that the statute of limitations in Pennsylvania was 2 years. So I would have had to get myself, as a broken, traumatized kid, expensive lawyers and go against it. I would have been raked over the coals. So there was absolutely nothing I could do. And they knew it. And so they shoved it under the carpet. I left the institution, and nothing was ever done, even though it bubbled up pretty much every decade. And I would, once again tell somebody, you should do something. And they never did. So finally, in 2019, I told the entire story to the Philadelphia Inquirer. They found a bunch of other people to whom it had happened with the same teacher. Not quite as egregious as mine, but various things happened. And the story came out. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of something, right? To have the worst thing that ever happened to you suddenly thousands, hundreds of thousands of people basically know in a very disgusting way how you lost your virginity at 14. And so it took me a little while, but I actually had somebody kind of keep all of the messages, even the ones on Facebook, and, go through everything. And a few weeks later, after I kind of recovered, I started going through everything. And I had thought it was going to be, okay, there we go. Okay, now I can move on or whatever. But there were so many stories that I realized I can't walk away from this. These also need to be told, and so that's how it kind of began, because everybody started out with, Dear Lara, this happened to me with this teacher at this school, and I realized it was global and endemic, and basically so many times the same thing happened, that the institution, protected the man and basically threw away the woman or the child like trash. And I thought, well, I have to do something about this. So let's tell these stories and let's get them out there. So that became this film, which is Dear Lara, which is coming out imminently.
Yeah. It's such an incredibly difficult and important topic. And I want to thank you for privately sharing this film with me. I was able to see it. And it's it's beautiful. Like it's a beautiful film about a horrible thing. So congratulations on the film.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it's really not at all just me. It's a lot of other people who gave their stories to
Mhm.
this film, and it wouldn't have been this way 3 years ago, interestingly enough. But somehow the zeitgeist is changing, and everybody in the film uses their own face and their own name. There is no anonymity, and even though I very much understand people who need to be anonymous, it is stronger if they're not. If you stand behind and completely face with your own persona what's been done to you. And so I think that makes the film quite a lot stronger, in fact, the lack of anonymity.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. All these different but similar stories and beautiful music that you've woven in, which is going to be coming out in an album as well.
Yeah, I think I'm going to bring out the Dear Lara soundtrack,
Mm.
which is kind of interesting because some of it's pre-recorded because we also go into other stories having to do with other institutions such as orchestras, and at that point, I'm not going to hire an entire orchestra to do something because mostly I did with string quintet.
Mhm.
Um, for the soundtrack. But so I used some pre-recorded material that I own from my own label, and so it's interesting because it goes from sort of string quintet to historical stuff like me playing when I was 14, and then over into the great Schubert 8, and and then back out to yeah. I mean there's themes that are woven throughout, like Schubert kind of comes in and out of it. There's the trope of death and the maiden really kind of makes me think of what it is that happened to us.
Mhm.
I mean, we were basically handed a life sentence, or as you saw in the film, some of us a death sentence. And so I used an arrangement that I did for solo violin, quite a lot of Death and the Maiden itself, and then in comes the Schubert 8, in comes Schubert 3. So there's a little bit of that throughout, and little quotes here and there to foreshadow the big symphony coming in with Catherine Needleman, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, Catherine was on this podcast last year, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's, she's so busy with all the activism she does, but she used to publish these redacted letters that she would receive, a lot of them about similar situations. They're just
Yeah.
absolutely heartbreaking. When your article first came out in the Philadelphia Inquirer, I had seen it, and I was just flabbergasted because I knew that the name.
Mm,
Yasha Brodsky, and I'd heard stuff about him because, yeah, it's like this whisper campaign.
yeah.
And there's many other famous and not so famous. I'd heard so many stories over the years about the most appalling behavior. And I do think classical music is, well, I think you've said it, it's particularly dangerous for children, right?
Well, yeah, there are very few professions where you have like, an 8-year-old in a room with a man one on one. You don't have that in English literature. You don't have 8-year-old accountants or physicists. Um, so I think this kind of child abuse tends to happen much more in these sorts of situations. Also, these men, supposedly, as Catherine would say, big fancy men, are given ridiculous messianic amounts of power over the children, over the parents, over the institution, even. And that's a big problem because as I said before, the institution will absolutely back the man and not the woman or the child. They're seen as disposable. But the man is not, because I guess the man is famous, so we must protect that name at all costs. And that's what the institutions have done forever. That's what they did to me and to pretty much everyone else in my film, and what they continue to do. And that's one big reason for this film, is that that this this has to stop. I don't ever want anyone to be in the position I was in. I don't want any woman to have to choose between having sex with her teacher or her career ever again. And the only way to do that is to use, it's trite to say, but sunlight as a disinfectant. Like all these stories have to be blown completely open. And it, you may have noticed that in my film, most of the women are kind of close to my age, if not my age. I'm 54 now. When I came out about my child abuse, I was 48, which is approximately, actually a couple of years early than, usually it's in the early 50s that people who suffer child abuse come out. And I want it to be possible for 19-year-olds to say, hey, this happened, without it ruining their career anymore. Or, hey, this almost happened to me. This shouldn't happen. But they can't, because of the preposterous amount of power, because of, the fact that these men will then say, oh, don't work with her. And they'll be blacklisted. And we have to stop that. Because what it is, it's a massive brain drain. And there are so many women who have been abused out of the music world and who have just left the music world because it was ruined for them by this abuse. And some of those could have been, can you imagine the amount of talent that's just gone by the wayside? Half of the people that wrote to me are not in the profession anymore. Half of those don't even listen to music anymore, like any kind of music. Like the whole thing, what they loved, what they thought they were going to give their lives to, was ruined by the greed of one man.
And to be clear, it's not always just women who are victims.
No, we do actually have one man in the film as well. There's everybody knew, I guess you could say, about James Levine. Everybody's always known about James Levine, and nobody ever did anything. And that was not women. Let's put it that way. But but in general, it does. The majority that I've seen, or at least who have reached out to me, the vast majority does tend to be women.
So since you have become very vocal about this, has it affected your career, do you think, negatively or positively?
That's a good question, because it's actually a hard answer because of the fact that COVID happened, like just after this all came out. And so nobody did anything for like a year and a half. And then after that, I think COVID kind of taught me that, maybe I don't want to be on the road half the time anymore. Maybe I do kind of want to calm down a little bit and not have to do this. And I sort of looked around and thought to myself, this year, at 54 years old, I've now been working for 50 years. So that's more than most people. I played my first concerto when I was 4 years old with Windsor Symphony. So, and I got paid for it. So I've been working for 50 years. And I realized that since 2019, since I've spoken to so many people, done sort of a lot of my own little investigations here and there, I know so much about so many people that I don't want to be in this profession anymore. And so back in, I'm sort of trying to retire and sort of slowly retiring. My brother has now completely retired.
Really?
He's never going to play another note.
Wow.
He retired April of 2025. And he's just so disgusted with the music field as well. And so am I. And so I don't see why I should want to be in a field that has treated me this way. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't ever do anything again, but it has to be something that, that I'm really interested in, or that, or that it's a friend's orchestra, or it's a place I really want to go. So I have some of those things coming out, like Dina Gilbert with Walla Walla. It's her first season out there. She's like, will you come out? I was like, oh, okay, of course. I'm doing it's a benefit concert, actually, for Rebecca Bryant Novak in Rochester. She was unfairly expelled from Eastman for complaining about harassment. That's another school with a cesspool under it. But and then next year I have to actually learn a concerto, which I'm getting lazy in my old age. But it has to be worthwhile to learn the Kurt Weill Concerto, and it will be, because it's in Parma, in Italy. So I'm really excited about that. So, these sorts of things will happen, but at the moment, I'm just more interested in the film, being there with the film, being there for Q&As, traveling around with it, talking to people, and just doing what it is I love. The world doesn't need another Mendelssohn concerto from me, or, a Tchaikovsky here and there, or something like
Well,
that.
just to say, you're just a phenomenal violinist, and I'd be happy to hear you play any concerto. But actually, just the burnout with the same repertoire, I completely get that.
Yeah, it's not interesting for me. Lots of people do it just fine, and for me, to do something new, to set up ideally at some point a new commissioning body, to set up a foundation to help people that when they speak up, they get sued by their perpetrators. I mean, I want to help the Katie Bergloff thing out in Seattle and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's a little bit more what I want to be doing. And I think partly why I sort of did so much all these years was it was survival. Because I was like, okay, this is the only way I can survive. It's all I know how to do. I mean, my last academic grade was 7, for God's sakes. I wouldn't be able to go even back to high school without some. It's so ridiculous. I'm such a one-trick pony. So, and it's just always been like, okay, I have to, make enough money to do this. I have to survive. I have to survive. I have to survive. And then all of a sudden, like during COVID, I was like, well, actually, I've been working hard for a long time. I own an apartment. I own my violin. I own So I don't actually have to work that hard anymore. And it just like the light bulb that went on over my head when I was suddenly like, oh my God, I don't have to hustle. I don't have to, and it was kind of a really amazing moment to tell my manager, like, just, don't hustle for me anymore. If something comes through and I want to do it, I will. But let's just calm everything down and I'm going to slowly move to other things.
Well, Lara, what do you think about this hyper-competitive world of like child prodigies in classical music and how that affects people's um, outlook on life? Would you have advice for parents who are worried about their kids succeeding, who are very talented? Hi, just a really quick break from the episode. I wanted to let you know about some other episodes. I've linked directly to this one, which I think may interest you, with Catherine Needleman, Bente Illevold, Samantha Ege, Naomi Moon-Siegel, and Yolanda Bruno. In the show notes, you'll also find a link to sign up for my newsletter, where you'll get exclusive information about upcoming guests, a link for my Ko-fi page to support this project directly, where you can buy me one coffee or every month, on my podcast merchandise store with a design commissioned from artist Steffi Kelly. You can also review this podcast, share it with your friends, and follow on your podcast app, YouTube, and social media. All this helps spread the word. Thanks. Now, back to my conversation with Lara.
I mean, when we were kids, it's hard really for me to remember it, but yeah, there were a lot of like jealous parents, I remember, because we didn't seem to have to work very hard to achieve success. Because I guess it was just very natural or something, my brother and I, and we just, things happened quickly and naturally, and I don't think I ever in my life practiced more than like 2 or 3 hours a day. And sometimes, when I would do a master class, I'd get these parents coming up and proudly telling me that their kid practices 6 to 7 hours a day. And I would like recoil in disgust. I mean, I just think that's just wrong. Like, if you have to spend your entire day doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. You should put your energy towards something else that is obviously not music. But yeah, I mean, there's all these competitions and stuff these days. I guess I see it on the violin channel, and a few things that I follow, and I guess I don't know. Are they good? I don't think so. I think they're. I mean, I guess it is good in a way because there's a goal. You have to learn this piece, and then you play this piece, and you have a place to play it. But it seems to go against what this means in the first place. It's not like who can do it the fastest. And it feels to me like competitions are kind of about who can play this the fastest or whatever. I judged an international competition once, and I'll never do it again. It was awful. And, the person who had by far the most beautiful Mozart and Beethoven, by far, got kicked out, of course, because they played a note out of tune in Paganini. And I was just, what is this about? It's not about music anymore. So I don't very much love those, but, it's not for me to say they shouldn't exist. People want to keep doing them. It's up to them. But I won't have anything to do with them.
Well, I think a lot of us really admire you because you're so strong and so brave. And even as a 17-year-old, I mean, you found this crazy opportunity to go to the former U.S.S.R.
Well, that was partly, yeah. I mean, I look back and that was pretty freaking brave. That's true. I was 17 and I went by myself. Well, I think it was partly I wanted to get as far away as possible from that stupid school.
Mm-hmm.
So I put an ocean and an iron curtain between myself and it. And to be honest, it was really the best thing I could possibly have done. Like, nobody knew me there. And nobody knew what I'd come from. And so I was kind of able to sort of start myself anew. Mm-hmm. It sounds a little silly, but, and for the first time I was learning about life, like I'd been at Curtis, in any given year, you maybe meet 30 new people, all of a sudden here I am in the Shiksa, like living with 800 new people, all of them from places I've hardly even heard of before, like the Stans and North Korea and a whole bunch of Cubans. And it was just amazing to meet these folks. And thanks to my father, we grew up bilingual. And because of that, and I guess like a musical ear and absolute total immersion, it actually wasn't that hard to be speaking Russian by about a month and a half, 2 months in.
Okay. My roommate was Moldavian, so at first we kind of understood each other through Moldavian and French, but it's actually very far away. So finally she just like threw up her hands and said, "Come on, we have to learn Russian." And and drilled me every morning on the tra tra sra sra, to get that tongue rolling. And so she's a great teacher. Are you still in touch with some people you met at that time?
Very much so, yeah. Especially some of the, well, I guess then Yugoslavs and now Montenegrins or Serbians or Croatians. Yeah, and it's even when I meet somebody who I didn't really know then, but like a little bit, it's almost like we were once in jail, like outside of jail, it's like, oh my God, how have you been for the last 35 years? And all of a sudden we're the best of friends because we both had this experience in Moscow. So yeah, it's definitely, it was the best thing I ever could have done. I think it probably saved my life.
Yeah. And you're the first classical artist to start your own record company.
I believe so, yeah. First solo, at least. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did that in actually 2000, 99, 2000. That's when I started the company. And mostly did it just because I wanted to just be sure that everything I put out there forever, because recordings are forever, was something that I believed in and could do with utmost integrity. Because I started hearing about, colleagues of mine and stuff being told by their record label, here, do all these sonatas for violin and sackbut. And it just, okay, not that, but in fact, that would be really cool. I've always wanted to do something with sackbut just because I love saying sackbut. But I didn't want that. So I started my own label, and I've been with that ever since, with a little sort of not great fated jump over to Sony as an experiment, but then back to my own label, which I still have.
There's another album. You have many great albums out there. I encourage people to listen to them all. But your album, She, Her, Hers from 2022, and I guess partly because of the pandemic, you didn't do that much. You did some publicity around it, but not everyone maybe will have heard it. So I'm hoping we could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it's not like the Bach concertos. It's not something you're going to put on for fun necessarily. It's more because you're interested in solo violin music and music by women. It was It was a pandemic project. I actually did it in an empty office because it was possible to have a huge empty office with mahogany lined walls, and it had great acoustics. And so I just moved in some recording equipment and did it there. And yeah, I mean, women that I had been fans of for a long time. I did some solo violin pieces by them. For example, Valerie Coleman, who's probably commissioned up the wazoo until from 10 years. She has a flute piece, which is really nice. So I just kind of arranged it for violin and recorded it on violin. Did some stuff by Ana Sokolović. There are some really great caprices by Eckhart Gramate, Sophie Carmen Eckhart Gramate, that like people play the Paganini all the time, and only occasional Canadians will have heard of these 10 caprices that she wrote. And I think they're way more interesting. Like they all have stories behind them, and you know, she was a violinist and a pianist, so they're sort of overachiever there, and they're very violinistic and great fun to play. So I recorded a bunch of those, and yeah, commissioned a couple of things, and then just kind of put them all together.
Yeah.
So
it's such a great album, and you know, I knew Ana Sokolović's music. I played some of it here in my orchestra, so I was hoping we could include at least a clip of maybe the Danza.
Yeah, I think I did on the recording Danza 2 and 4. Yeah, Danza 2 is like, I do that one quite a lot live. It's very effective. Yeah, her music is always, it's like just at that like crux of almost not possible, but it's always possible. But she always makes it, she makes you work. It's never easy, but it's always worth it.
Just in terms of working with living composers, I mean, do you ever push back and say, look, this is possible, but
Yes,
Mhm.
all the time. Like especially when folks aren't when folks are pianists, then you know I'll just be like, this is not worth it. This is how much I'm gonna have to work to do this. If I change this to a 6, it's so much easier. Like I often make stuff way more violinistic.
Yeah.
I've worked a lot with Martin Kennedy, Gene Prisker. Martin Kennedy's a pianist, and at one point, I premiered his concerto a couple years ago with Omaha. And at one point, he had something in F sharp major, and I said, okay, we're gonna just put that up a half tone. And he managed to modulate it so it worked fine and everything. And I was like, I mean, it was all these double stops way up high, and I just no, I need my open strings. Got to change it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, a couple of people have told me that by the time they were playing something, it had already been premiered elsewhere, and it was too late, to push back. So if you're the one playing it for the first time, it's a great opportunity to have that interaction.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. I mean, honestly, well, it doesn't really matter anymore, but don't tell the students. But I change stuff in like Dvorak concerto, for example, the stuff that I find is too awkward. There's a bunch of things in Tchaikovsky where I'll just do one finger straight up the G string. Like it's that sounded dirty. It's really not. But I don't call it faking if it sounds better than what it would be if you actually did it. So I consider myself an expert faker. And yeah, but if something's about to be premiered and I just, if something needs to be changed for posterity, yeah, I'll make sure that it's done. Because there's no sense in working on things that are awkward if they could easily be changed. I mean, what a waste of time.
There was a composer on that album I wasn't familiar with, Gabriela Lena Frank.
Oh yeah,
Her beautiful piece, it means fireflies, Luciérnagas.
Luciérnagas. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, she's actually very well known in the States. She's out in San Francisco area, and in fact, she just did an opera on Frida Kahlo. That was the first Spanish language opera at San Francisco Opera, and yeah, she's really great. Her really interesting background. Her mother is Peruvian, and her father American, and so she kind of grew up in both places and was really inspired by some of the traditional music of Peru, which came out in these. She did this beautiful solo suite for solo violin.
Just to back up for a second, the first Spanish language opera ever in San Francisco,
Yeah.
that's kind of shocking, right?
Well, yes, I guess, because obviously they've done lots in Italian.
Yeah.
But it is when you think about it, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd love to hear it. I think there might be a recording coming out, but yeah, it's just called Frida, I think.
And people who follow you, especially on YouTube and social media, see some of you. You've always had this sense of fun, and you put out really fun videos. And connected with this album, you have this track where there's a bar fight. I can't pronounce the name of this tune.
Variaiuni,
There you
yeah,
go.
it's a Romanian. That was that was a funny shoot. Yeah, it's a Romanian Roma tune, kind of more or less adapted a little bit by me. And yeah, that's a hilarious video. Bar fight. It's an actual bar fight, and we did it at the Old Cameron in Toronto. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners would know the Old Cameron.
And actually, we were just speaking about Gabriela Lena Frank and Peru. So your first trip there in 1988, and you posted about this pretty recently, returning there and your continuing relationship with Peru. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of cool.
Yeah, I first went actually right before I went to Russia. So I don't know. All of a sudden, like my last year in Curtis, there was a suicide attempt, which obviously you know didn't work because I'm talking to you, and somehow after that, I just kind of thought, well, you know, it I don't want to say it like sort of freed me, but suddenly it was like, oh, extra time.
Mm.
And I met somebody who said, if you ever find yourself in South America, come on by. And I thought, well, I've never been there. Why don't I go? So I literally just went and turned up on his doorstep. And it was a wonderful couple of weeks in Peru. Went up to Cusco, to Iquitos, and I had just turned 17 years old, and it was finally seeing the world, like, not through concert halls, because I'd done all these tours in Europe and stuff as a child and stuff, but just as a normal person, and it was really great. And I've been going back ever since. I think this last time was probably my 13th time there or something, and every single time I'm just so happy to be there. I really love it.
And Lara, it might have been when you were writing about Peru that I read, seemed kind of funny. You auditioned for the Marlboro Festival with the Bach Chaconne, which is solo for those that don't know, but you had a pianist that you paid to sit there because you had to have a piano.
Well, yeah, I was also I had the Beethoven Concerto, I think, Prokofiev F minor
Oh,
Sonata.
okay.
I mean, there's all sorts of things that you were supposed to
Oh,
play,
okay.
and they said, here, start with the Bach, and so I did. And then there's a big minor section. And I'm like, that's weird that I'm playing all. And I remember looking over, and nobody said anything, so I just kept going.
Cool.
And then, I don't know, I played a quartet excerpt or something like that. And then they were like, okay, thanks. And I left the room. And my pianist is like, well, what, what the hell was I doing here? So, yeah, it was weird. I mean, I got in, I guess the word for it is, but, I was so messed up. I had never even played a string quartet in my first summer at Marlboro. Like, I didn't know anything about anything. So I was in a way kind of too young to be there. And I don't know. I think it was Felix Galimir who really pushed for me to be there. And he made sure that he was in most of my groups. And, he was a really fantastic teacher and person. And I'm really grateful for him. But I mean, he must have been really frustrated because I was just, messed up and didn't really know what I was doing.
How old were you?
That was the summer I had just turned 17. Okay. So it was crazy. It was like I went to Peru, I went to Marlboro, and then I went to the U.S.S.R. So, yeah, and then I went to Marlboro the summer after as well, after the U.S.S.R. And, it was as a very different person, and it was great.
Coming back there after your experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was definitely different. That year changed me a lot, but for the better, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I was much more perceptive. Like, I mean, I know my brother enjoyed being also a senior member a lot at Marlboro until he didn't. And it was, I guess, good to learn about stuff, but it was very, very cliquey. And most of my friends, certainly the first year, everybody treated me really badly. So my friends were in the kitchen staff, my only friends. And then the second year I had some friends, but they weren't musicians, they worked in the library or they, was not. I guess I was just seen as some sort of weird pariah or something.
Well, what did you learn from Felix Galimir? He's quite a legend.
Yeah, well, a lot of things. Like at Curtis, I knew that somebody in a string quartet would always oversleep like one of the first coachings, and so I was always kind of there, ready to do Bartók solo sonata for him, or I would wake up a pianist, and I remember doing the Schoenberg Fantasy with him and Bartók's second sonata, and that was all with him. It was like thanks to him that I actually learned something from that school. Thanks to him and Edward Aldwell, the theory teacher, who none of whom were actually my teachers, but they taught me a lot.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to talk about although you dropped out of school, I mean, you had worked with several teachers on and off in the early years. Is there any other mentor that you wanted to talk about?
So there was somebody that I met at the new school the year before I went to Curtis. His name was Joey Corpus, and he passed away just a couple of years ago, and he was from the Philippines, and he basically taught me everything I know about playing the violin, about the actual mechanics stuff. He taught me how to teach myself because I needed to know that, because nobody ever really taught me that in any school. And for a long time, he was known as sort of the underground guru of New York. Like, a lot of freelance musicians and stuff would go play for him, and he was really, really beloved. And we stayed friends until he died. And yeah, he was a wonderful, wonderful mentor, and just always so encouraging, and just such great ideas. So many ways of experimenting with, like, well, if this isn't working, maybe this would, and and just he taught me patience, and those things are hard to learn and especially when things have been broken for a while, to sort of mend them, and he managed to sort of reignite my once love of music, I guess.
How old were you when you were working with him then?
Well, actually, when I was at Curtis.
Okay.
As well, yeah. Well, because I didn't really, in name, I guess we studied with Arnold Steinhardt, but that was like the heyday of the Guarneri Quartet. So he was there maybe once every 2 or 3 months. So, yeah. But, I mean, he's great, but what are you going to do once every 2 or 3 months? So yeah, I say I studied with Joey later in my second year when they switched teachers, and then all of my third year of Curtis.
Okay.
So it would be him, Galimir, and Edward Aldwell.
So what were lessons with him like?
Well, they usually involved food. And sometimes like the watching of various old movies and stuff like that. But yeah, just how to really, really like listen to yourself. And he would also teach you how to, at some point, some of his former students and one of them recorded a lot of lessons and took down everything. We want to sort of create a book about what it was that he gave us and the wisdom that he imparted, because just like quality over quantity is what I learned from him. So I was able to learn things, really quickly, just because he taught me how to start and never make a false start, because that will go into your memory, and it does to this day. Like I still play wrong notes in Secret Place. I still play wrong notes all over the place because I learned them that way and I can't change. And just that kind of patience of when you start a new piece to figure out what this page is going to be harder than this page, so make sure you start with this one. And these are just things that people should have told me as a kid, but they just never really bothered, I guess. And he taught me that intonation is in the ear. I always thought it was in the fingers. Like that was like such a revelation. So yeah, he was definitely my great mentor, along with Galimir and Aldwell.
Anything else about the way he addressed, phrasing or bow arm or any other violin nerdy stuff?
Well, I don't know if you notice this with people that you hear these days, but one of our big pet peeves was, I call it portato. And it just feels as though everybody, like, nobody can pull a straight line anymore.
Yeah.
It's like everybody goes like, ha, 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 ha. And so, and I've taught this in a couple of master classes as well. Like, he'd be like, oh, you're portatoing. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. So play the tune in your mind, play the tune on the, whatever, E string, A string, and only play your G string. And it's amazing. You see your bow go like this, and then you're like, oh, shoot, I'm really portatoing. That's terrible. And then you learn it. But it's a great trick to make sure you don't portato. But a lot of people don't seem to realize how ugly it is and how sort of heaving. And I've heard even soloists and may I say even members of my own family do lots of just strange portato, and I don't know why. And it's in orchestras actually all over the place as well, worldwide.
Yeah, it's something my teacher had addressed with me, and I've always been super conscious of it. And when I listen to auditions,
Good.
like I'm really listening for it.
Yeah.
So when I work on it with people, like first of all, if you remove vibrato, it can reveal it. Sometimes it's connected with shifts, but it is people. I mean, it comes from a place of people wanting to express themselves. It comes from the emotion. It's just,
Are you sure?
well,
I think it comes from fear. I think
okay.
it comes from like not wanting to be the first in orchestras anyway. They don't want to be the first to play the note, so they're kind of like this, like waiting until, and so it just puts everything out of time and makes it sound heavy.
Okay, maybe in an ensemble setting like that. But I mean, when someone's playing a beautiful, big, soaring melody in a concerto and they're using that sort of stopping thing, I think that's where I don't think, they're not hearing it, right? Like you were saying, learning to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's something when I've judged like various things. I only did one international competition, but I've done a couple of chamber music things, and the Canada Council Instruments Bank and the Sphinx and stuff. And that's something I always look for. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this person is so good at everything else, and yet ruins every big phrase because of portato. So yeah, it seems to be a bit of a scourge in string playing right now. Well, actually not right now. I guess I've been noticing it since Joey taught me to look out for it. Yeah.
was wonderful to hear about him because I hadn't heard about him before. So maybe to wrap it up, do you want to talk a little bit about, becoming a filmmaker and how it's similar or different than music?
Well, it's very different than music, actually. I've kind of jumped in the deep end by sort of just making a film, being its director, and learning how to get it out there into the world. It's very, very different than just audio, I guess. Yeah, it's a whole new world for me. And people have said, well, once this one's out there and gone everywhere, what's going to happen? I'm not really sure. I mean, it's been an incredible amount of work and life force to make this film. So is that something I want to do again? I'm not entirely sure, but I've definitely learned a lot. And we had a great editor as well, Christy Herring, and she would always, like, whenever I would say, well, I don't know, why is this here? Why wouldn't it be? She would always have a reason. Like, well, we need this so that this will, and I really like that kind of thing. Like, always having a reason for doing something rather than just like, well, it felt right, or,
Mm-hmm.
and again, that I bring that back to music, because in master classes, I'll be like, why are you doing this? And the student will say, well, my teacher told me to. And that's just the worst answer to me that you could ever have. It's like, well, what do you think? Well, I don't know. Well, then, why are you doing this? And so that was great from an editing standpoint, because I've been editing my own music videos for 15 years, but a full-length documentary is a very different kettle of fish, of course. And I learned a lot from her. So yeah, I'm getting to know a lot more film people, and learn more about a profession that's interesting to me. Well, I mean, I think film's interesting to almost everybody, but it's certainly something that I do not regret having spent 5.5 years on this film.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share this with your friends and check out episodes you may have missed at leahroseman.com. If you could buy me a coffee to support this series, that would be wonderful. I'm an independent podcaster and I really do need the help of my listeners. Keep in mind, I've also linked directly several episodes you'll find interesting in the show notes of this one. All the links are in the show notes. The podcast theme music was written by Nick Cold. Have a wonderful week.